everybody. Welcome to the show Do You Believe on Paranormal TV Network. And tonight I have my lovely co-host with me, Donna Raymond.
Hello.
Hi, honey.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
And our guest is Kurt W. Kesler, and I'm going to call him right now. Too much for being our guest tonight.
For having me, and if I do this right, I'm really going to try. Is it Norene over here and Donna over here, or did I get those?
Norene's in the black hair, and Dee is in the blondish brown hair.
Okay. Well, you have to remember, I'm actually going through the camera, and I don't know these more serious subjects. I do apologize ahead of time. As serious and dark, if you will, as this subject is, I have a tendency to try to lighten things up. I am noted that when I do even just a regular paranormal search for a ghost hunt, if you will, not even anything demonic related, I am actually noted at just trying to be jovial because it's even when you're dealing with regular paranormal, it's still a dark subject, and I have a tendency to try to lighten things up because if not, well, it can wear thin on you. They don't make that much scotch in the world for me to deal with on a regular basis.
Okay, first what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about your book, and your book is called?
Demonology 101.
Okay, and then why did you pick this book to write?
Well, actually, I had started investigating the occult as I started getting into demonology. And the reason why this subject became near and dear was because as I started going into deeper occult studies, I started realizing that people had a lot of misconceptions as to what the occult truly was. There were a lot of people that had these concepts that you hear the word occult and people automatically assume it's a group of people in robes with lit candles and chanting. And the reality is that no, the occult is the history. It is the artifacts. It is the archaeology of any religion. And there are some dark rituals in every religion's past. And ironically, one of the things I came across on, obviously, was the concepts of demons themselves. If we were to approach religion from a neutral standpoint, in other words, we don't take that standpoint that your religion is the one that is best. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do fully believe that if you get involved in a religion, obviously it is the best for you. Much like my religion is the best, much like anybody's religion is the best for them. The reality is, though, is that if you sit there and you pull that plug, so to speak, that says that one religion is the correct one, and you look at them all from a neutral standpoint and allow them to integrate even with each other, you kind of are able to fully understand where demonology begins, because it's the same as angelology, if you will. There are demons that have done dark things. There are demons that have actually done positive things. There are angels, in the same note, that have done good things, but at the same time, they've done negative things as well.
Okay. Kurt, can everybody hear Kurt?
If everybody can hear me, then say applesauce.
Yeah, raise your hand.
Raise your hand if you can hear Kurt.
Okay, yes. Okay, go ahead, Kurt. No,
okay. So, cute. Okay, so, let's see, what was my question? Okay, so you're saying that demons can do bad things and good things, or people have perceived that? What does that mean? Also, angels, what does that mean when you say they do good things and bad things?
Well, there are angels that have, and when you know, now this thing actually comes up on my computer. Excuse me. There are angels that actually did negative things. And if you follow Christian lore, if you follow Jewish lore, demons have actually done positive things as well. There are this is probably one of the best examples. There's actually a demon that is well known for his love, if you will, of torturing child molesters. Once a child molester is actually, basically sent to hell, that's this guy's job. That's what he loves to do. This is his claim to fame. And of course, right now, if I have to, I'll have to actually look the name up because the name escapes me. But and ironically, I put that in my book. But there are demons that have been known to do these sort of things, and some people can say, "Well, that's kind of bad," but at the same time, I mean, call me a little bit crazy. You wiping out a kid molester, I find that to actually be very good.
Okay, so and then what about angels? You say that angels can do both good and bad.
That's correct. Angels can do both good and bad. Angels, there have been angels that have incited wars throughout history. There have been angels that ironically built up enough negative energy just through their existence and some of the stuff that they did, that they were actually able to, they're actually able to pass into hell. If you look at the whole conflict of everything, if you take the ideas that you have three demi-planes, you actually have heaven, then you have, the earth, and then you have hell. Well, there's actually angels and demons, both, that can actually traverse both sides, and it's because of the actions that they've done. There's actually, what was it? There was an angel that was reported that had not gotten along with Jesus when Jesus was actually brought on the planet. And in turn, he's considered a negative angel. Even though he's actually still an angel, he's considered a negative one. Once again, I do apologize. There's a reason why I wrote things down and I put it in the book, was because I have bad memory.
Okay. Okay. So is this? Do you believe in a hell then?
Actually, I believe that all the pantheons have their own mark. As much as there is an actual hell, there's actually a pantheon for Hades. Every pantheon exists. If you have to actually stop and look at the concept of religion in the ways of being able to say, like I said before, that they're all correct. Well, imagine a crossing over in which you have every pantheon existing, and really when it comes down to it, if you take all these pantheons, they're all there. You have a formal heaven, and then you have a formal hell. You have the pantheons for the Greek, where it's basically Mount Olympus. You have the pantheons for the Egyptians. You have the pantheon under the Sumerian beliefs, and they all basically have to interact with each other. And sometimes that interaction does take place on this pantheon, if you will, that we call Earth.
So basically, what you're saying, a pantheon is like a realm. Yes?
Pretty much.
Okay.
So you say to open up your eyes to what the Bible, what the churches, and more importantly, even what Satanists ever did. So what is that all about?
Well, basically, a lot of people, like I said, because they hear the word the occult, they automatically go in one direction. And I do actually blame the great satanic panic, if you will, the very late 1960s all the way up to the mid-1990s that took place. And what that did was it kind of made people just believe that you only have one basic Bible. People also failed to remember that a lot of the Bible has gotten edited well over the years. Really, when you hold up a formal Bible in nowadays context, you're only looking at about 60% of the Bible that remains that was approved. The King James Version he went in there and he edited things down. He took a lot out. And there were people before him that did the very same thing. When you look at a Holy Bible in modern times, like I said, it's only 60% of what was truly written. Now, granted, there have been acknowledgments. As recently as 1950, the Catholic Church actually went ahead and acknowledged that Mary Magdalene, of all things, wasn't a prostitute. Because, well, like I had said before, there was somebody that removed a bunch of chapters out that took place in between the time Jesus meeting Mary the prostitute, and of course Mary Magdalene popping up in the story, if you will. A lot of people have ignored what the religious lores are, and you also have to remember that there's a great mythos that's been built over the years, and sometimes it's actually built by people who practice Satanism, and that could be anything from Luciferian even up to the Levian, which is really ironic because, of course, Levian satanic worship is actually it's atheist based. The biggest thing is that certain religions have their own magic, if you will, and that's the reason why we call Judaism the magic rites of Judaism. We call that Cabal. Every religion actually has a Cabal, and in that Cabal, they have carried on the traditions. They have carried on the lore, the mythology that involves any and all religions. I dare say it's mildly ironic. There's a lot of Christians out there that fail to remember that really, in all fairness, the whole tale of Lucifer and how he left, heaven and got cast into hell, a lot of that was actually, it's not really prominent in the Bible. We gain that through Christian mythology in tales such as Paradise Lost and so forth. We don't actually gain it from the actual scripture of the Bible. And some people have actually located the tale of Lucifer to where they were able to backtrack into certain scrolls that had gotten left out of the Bible. I think one interesting fact that I actually had found out, and I actually ended up publishing on, was that Lucifer had actually existed in 2 years of God time, if you will. And he existed up in heaven, and he was a pain in Jehovah's butt. He was doing whatever he can to strike chaos and anarchy, if you will, in the realm of heaven. And it was only after 2 years, and a lot of people had actually written this, that after Jehovah had worked things out to where Hades would no longer be in control of the Hades or Hell region, and that Hades would actually take his own region. That's actually when Lucifer was fully cast out. And during that 2-year time, Lucifer didn't go by the name of Lucifer. He actually went by the name of Lucifer, which is actually even more ironic because if you track some of the cult activities, and yes, there are various cults that worship various beings. You pick an entity, and there's a cult somewhere that is actually worshipping. There was actually a cult that worshipped Lucifer because they knew that Lucifer was actually the still holy angel that was causing chaos and destruction.
Now, so your book is basically a guide to demonology and explores how it began, where, and what direction it's headed in. So what direction is it headed in, Kurt?
Well, the directions of modern demonology, for the better degree, are hopefully, and I am saying this, are hopefully gearing away from its use and practice in deliverance ministries. I strongly believe that modern demonology is finally coming into its own realm. There have been enough time and enough people that have actually studied this subject, myself included, to make us realize that it's no longer one religion's right to say we have the claim on demonology. Ironically, even the concept of exorcisms, a lot of people automatically assume, well, only Catholic churches and Catholic priests are permitted to do so. And the reality is, no, they're not. They've actually gone on for quite some time, since even demons have actually been recorded. And like I said, this goes back 12,000 years, forget some of the modern religions, some of the younger ones. This goes back 12,000 years to Sumerian times. We knew that these creatures existed, and sometimes they did have the capability of possessing a human or possessing a dwelling. And the reality is that in modern time, in modern context, we unfortunately still have to face this one version of demonology, which, like I said before, is part of that whole deliverance ministries that pop up every now and then. Too many people are too eager to stop and see something and call it satanic. And the problem is that, well, when you do that, you kind of limit the abilities that you can use against it. There are actually spells that were written in Thelemic magic that have been well known to actually rid anyone, anything of anything demonic, anything negative. You see, that's the full breakdown. You cannot look at these entities as beings that are just beings. They're made up of something. And that something is actually energy.
So basically what is a demon? Because I don't think we've even gone there. What would you say is a demon?
A demon actually is nothing but negative energy.
Okay.
And like I said before, if you're able to sit there and you're able to go ahead and play, look at the religions and remove the context and say, my religion is more superior. My God is stronger than your God's. Because as long as you're able to pull away from that and look at the religions for what they're worth, don't describe it as the context that a God waved his hand, or gods, or goddess, waved their hand and created something. What if the power of evolution is God itself? And in many aspects, if we evolved, we were on this planet, and then we started looking at things, and we started channeling, we started focusing ideas and concepts, then in turn we, of course, can say that, well, by that definition, we created the gods. We sat there and we often looked at the God Jehovah as, a lot of us imagine him very Charlton Heston-like, with a long gray beard and long white hair and whatnot. And for some people that believe in the goddess, they automatically conjure up images of a woman running with wolves by the moon, the Donna mythos. And the reality is that we formed these beings, these entities. We formed these, we made it to where these energies, because they were always there in the universe since the Big Bang, we formed them into these concepts, these ideas. And one of the biggest things about it is that by honestly saying that we were able to form these beings, positive energy went one way, negative energy went another, and we in turn formed the demons themselves, which are, like I said, just nothing more but negative energy. And it should be noted that the only reason why I can honestly say that I fully support this concept, this is of the way everything went, was because we sat there, we take time, and we looked to the universe, we looked to whatever, and we sometimes looked at these entities, and we asked ourselves, is this all there is? And we kept asking for guidance. Well, people were given miracles here and there, and sometimes they were given things that could be considered not miracles. But we absorbed that actually from these beings. We gained these ideas, this trust. And really, when you weigh everything out from that point of view, that we formed these beings, it gives us the opportunity to actually stop and realize that we have finally achieved greatness. And when I say that, I mean, it may sound a little bit hokey, but it's something that you really have to stop and actually think about. If we can honestly look at these entities and realize that we formed them, and in turn, they created us, it really is a beautiful feeling in the universe, actually.
So,
I mean, it sounds spiritual, and it is, but it's the better part of accepting the universe into us as we accept the universe, or as the universe accepts us into it.
So I just want to get this really basic so people really understand what you're saying, which is humanity. You're talking about humanity, yes? Humanity basically took some feelings that were floating about the universe, some energy, not feelings, some energy floating about the universe, and either thought positive or negative, and from there created these kind of dark beings or light beings. So angel, same thing with angels, as they were created as well from thought by humanity.
Yeah. And for the better degree, if we sit there and we go in that mindset that these beings existed because I sat there and let's just hypothetically go back, say 6,000 years ago, roughly the birth of Judaism. And at the time, the earth is primarily dominated by a lot of the pagan religions. And I sit there and I say, no, I have this vision of the solitary God. And this solitary God is nothing but positive energy, however, though he does have some negative because he does have a wrath and so forth. And he's a fair God. And I lend thought to that. In turn, that being does start to exist. And only by others being told these stories, being told these tales of that creature's, that entity's way of being, others start to believe in it. Others start to focus their thought, their energy. You got to remember, really, when it comes down to it, I mean, it's the energies of the universe. I mean, yes, they're always there, but we ourselves are made up of energy as well. And we focus that thought, we focus those concepts into that idea, and in turn, we have established these gods or these demigods, or in some cases, the angels and the demons. We establish them, we give them shape, we describe them. So in turn, in our heads, the human beings are great creatures that have this beautiful ability to conceive and to imagine. And more importantly, we have the great ability to show a faith and a dedication to this belief and put our energy and our so much effort and so much structure into that. It goes very much with the concept of, if you will, of how people like to sit there and like to say, well, maybe ancient astronauts built the pyramids. And I even though I do have some UFO theories, I have always actually believed that no, there were no ancient astronauts that built the pyramids. Human beings built the pyramids because we are strong enough, we are smart enough, and we are amazing creatures that are capable of anything. You just gotta find a way of doing it.
So with back to the demons and the angels, does this include God too? Then did humanity come up with this concept of God, and we created God?
Well, like I said, that's the moment that a lot of people have to take a step back and realize that, well, some parts of the Bible, were left out. And part of the reason why those parts of the Bible were left out is because it was like an ever-evolving story. If you don't take the time to stop and realize, well, right here's a loophole in the Bible, that it basically, this little story right here shuts out everything else out of the story. It's like writing a great movie. If you don't remove that one part out and all this, people will sit there and they will stop to believe in the concept. I think one of the best ways of probably understanding that is, like I said before, if people were to sit there and to finally come up to the acknowledgement that Jesus Christ, yes, born of a God's thought, if you will, was actually put on the planet, and he took a human wife, there's a lot of people that realize the church itself probably might not exist anywhere near what it exists now. But more importantly, people might actually, not believe in the concept. So what people have to remember when it comes to Jehovah is that Jehovah is a purely blessed being, and there are different versions of Jehovah. I mean, everybody's got an idea of what Jehovah is. Anything from a basic Christian to a Baptist Christian to well, even Mormons. Mormons have got an interesting concept of God because in their tale of everything, God and Jesus were brothers. There's actually one Mormon sect that follows some of Joseph Smith's earlier writings to where Lucifer was actually a woman. So Jesus and Lucifer were actually brother and sister.
Oh goodness! Wow.
Can a demon have a physical appearance?
See, that's the beauty of everything. By sitting there and focusing all this energy out of all these years, these entities have been created, and they do exist. And it should be pointed out, and this is the reason why I'm going to say this. I probably will offend maybe some people that do ghost hunting. And it's mildly ironic because I myself, I started out in that field. The biggest thing about anything demonic or anything angelic, if a person believes that they've captured an EVP, if a person believes that they captured a physical photograph or whatnot, chances are, no, you didn't. Demons and angels, and maybe it's because, like I said, there was focused energy and thought into the creation of these entities that may be the answer. I don't actually know. But demons and angels are very hard to capture as far as photographic evidence and even electronic voice phenomenon evidence. These entities, 99% of the time, anytime that you're seeing a photograph or video or obviously an EVP, you are hearing or seeing the reactions of people that are interacting with that entity.
Explain that. I don't understand that.
The best way of explaining it is if you take people into a home, and this home happens to be, and mind you, this is very rare, but if this home happens to be under the possession, if you will, of a demonic nature, you will end up seeing people that are reacting to something, however there is nothing there. Ghosts or spirits that were once human, those are always the ones that are actually, you're able to capture their physical attributes or even hear the electronic voice phenomenon with those. Demonic entities, that, like I said, that's how every time I approach something on a paranormal scale, and these people go, well, I believe I got a demon voice talking to me. It's a demon's voice. I know it's not, because demons, much like the aspect, maybe it's a game to them, I do not know. They don't permit their voices to be captured.
No kidding.
And you can't have malevolent once human that are showing a lot of negativity in their death. Yeah, it's easy to go ahead and capture those.
So a ghost can pretend to have a demonic voice or whatever to maybe scare the investigator?
Well, in some aspects, I don't know if it's so much that they can impersonate a demon as it is they're just whenever you're facing a situation where you're dealing with malevolent spirit, especially, you're dealing with an entity that chances are, when it was alive, wasn't a great person.
Because I have heard an EVP myself that we captured, and it was pretty friggin' scary. I mean, it was scary.
Okay, well, you have to remember, like I said, chances are what you heard was a malevolent spirit. Just a rude, nasty, evil spirit. It was human.
But we're talking human.
It was once human.
We're talking human.
A great person as well.
So, and I don't want to get into bashing of anything, but there's a lot of groups out there that claim that every house, many houses they go into, they're dealing with demonic presence, and they're cleaning these houses out, and they're telling these poor people who own these houses that you have demons in your house. what is going on with that?
The reality is that no, they are not filled with demons. When you take a look at a paranormal case, and this is one of my biggest conjectures on the matter, because every time someone calls demon, I always have to gas up my car and go drive, and gas costs money. The reality is that you take a look at paranormal cases, truly paranormal cases where we've got activity inside the house that is not a squirrel in the attic or so forth. 1 out of every 200 of those cases, on average, is an actual demonic situation where you're dealing with an entity that is there that was no longer, that was never human. Okay? And those are really a demonic case, if you will.
But Kurt, how do you know? How do you know the difference between a demon and a bad ghost? How would you know the difference when you're doing a paranormal investigation?
One of the absolute best ways, well, and you also have to remember, there's a different concept as to what demons are. And not everyone is affected by the power of Christ. If you sit there and you take certain religious artifacts that are positive in nature, and like I said, you've got to be able to collect these artifacts. It's like playing a bad version of The Legend of Zelda, if you will. You've got to spend time collecting a lot of these pieces, and then what you do is you end up putting them inside a home. And if there's an actual demonic entity there, I assure you, that place will lighten up quite a bit. Now, when I mean lighten up, I don't mean that, oh, I felt the evil negativity go. No, I mean it will lighten up as in I have a few cases, a few boxes that are filled with certain things. I put them inside a home. I usually generally go outside, and I even because I get called in by a lot of paranormal investigators, I invite them to come outside with me. I invite the owners, if they're there, to come outside with me. Let's excuse me, sit around, maybe have a discussion, smoke a cigarette if anyone smokes, because that's obviously something you should not do on a paranormal investigation because of the possibility of contamination of photographs. So you do all this stuff outside, then you go back in, and chances are you will be seeing activity inside that house that it's obviously it's not because of something that was once human. The very first case actually that I was actually ever involved in, and this is actually the one that got me led into to becoming a demonologist. I had sat there, I'd been a part of an investigation, and this goes back years. We were using VHS cameras. There was no night vision. And we had heard all of this rumbling out of the back room. And when I say the back room, it was actually, the way the house was structured was there was an upstairs and a downstairs, but downstairs had 2 bedrooms on it, plus a kitchen and a front room, and then they had more bedrooms and whatnot upstairs and then basement. We heard rumbling out of the back bedroom, and we proceeded to start to walk down the hallway. Now, I say this probably is my one true moment where I probably could have said I had a red S on my shirt. I had noticed that 2 of the team members had kind of walked out on the front porch, and everybody else was huddled in a corner not far from the door, and I noticed that I was walking up toward these sounds that were coming out of the room. I sat there, I turned around, and I looked at a friend, and finally, after some convincing, she decided to go ahead and walk with me. We walked down the hall, we opened the door, and every item inside the bedroom looked like it was supposed to be where it was. The bed was roughly where it was. The dresser was where it looked like it was supposed to be. However, everything was inverted. Everything was turned upside down. And I won't lie, and that was only because certain religious artifacts, I guess, had already been inside the house. Namely, one of them recently had been a bottle of holy water that had been brought to the house because it was part of a little thing, because the owner had inherited the home from her grandmother, who was a member of a church down the way. And this tripped off that activity. Now, eventually what happened was that bedroom we're just standing there, and I really had, and I know I can't cuss, so I'm going to paraphrase this. I really had a WTF look on my face. I'm quite sure of this, as I'm looking at the bedroom and everything upside down. All of a sudden, hell did break loose, because everything just started cracking into each other like bumper cars. At that moment, I won't lie, I did start walking back, backwards down the hallway. And what had got me the most was the door had shut. And, I mean, there was still some rumbling. And I just remember a lot of us were just looking at each other like, what do we do now? What the heck? And what happened was the door opened. And as the door opened, I guess I can use visuals, hopefully. The door had opened, and there were wardrobe closet doors inside there that were right behind the door that had swung open. And they were the fold-up kind that you open up like this and whatnot. And you could tell that these doors had opened. And, God, this being came out.
Was it the energy, or did you see it?
I actually saw, the only way I can explain it is, have you ever seen someone who's old and shrunk up, scrabbly, you know what I mean? This person, they were just skin and bones, and they walked out for the entity appeared bald, and I seriously want to say it was a male entity, and turned, and it just walked out like this, and then turned, and as it turned, just two red glowing eyes. And these things felt like they went through my soul. They were just, and to this day, that's actually, I wish you could see that. I actually have my hair, one thing I cannot stand are people that do not have their normal eyes, especially red glowing ones at about, 20 feet down the hallway. It got me. And what happened was we ended up contacting the priest, because the beautiful part is that where this house was, it's located in downtown Columbus in the Harrison West area, and there's actually a Catholic church down there with a parochial house where 3 or 4 of the priests lived there. And we had gone down there by the blessing of the granddaughter. She said, yeah, go ahead, and we ended up talking to one, explaining everything, and he came back and he went through the cycle of everything and actually showed me what is involved in a house blessing and a removal. And there was a lot of activity. The one biggest thing that got me the most is that any one of our recordings did not involve a sampling of the demon's voice. But yet, when we sat there, when we got the chance to actually talk to each other, we didn't all hear the same voice, but what we heard were the same words. But they had been spoken to us almost just interestingly. It's just so hard to explain, because what I heard was a baritone voice whispering, and what another teammate had actually heard a woman, and it was almost like screaming and screeching, but yet we all heard the same words. We just didn't hear the same voice.
That's interesting.
And that's one reason why I know when people are telling me, well, we've got a demon, I usually give them the 20 questions, and if things don't work out a certain way, and heaven forbid if they show me, I got a photograph of it or whatnot, I know for a fact they're not dealing with a demon, they're dealing with something that was once human. Mm-hmm. It may have gotten infiltrated by this supreme negativity, by this evil, if you will, to coin another phrase, but reality is, no. What you got was a negative spirit. It was someone who the best way of explaining it, someone who was a bastard when they're alive, and they're a bastard when they're dead. You just got to deal with it.
Wow. So when a team comes to you and they say, "Oh, I think we have a demon," then you have a list of questions that you ask the paranormal group. Do you have that? You have a list of questions that you ask them?
I have a generic list of questions that's commonly asked, and usually they present to me whatever evidence they can, and we end up going from there. A lot of times there's two ways that I interact with paranormal teams, and like I said, I myself was a normal paranormal, that's a goofy term, but a normal paranormal, but I was a normal paranormal investigator. I have been doing that, actually, I still do it on occasion, it's for over 20 years. The thing that you have to do is, you first got to be able to get information on the client. You got to backtrack the clients a lot. You got to take a look at the evidence they got. And it's really every situation you kind of have to cater towards it. One of the things that actually kind of gets me, and I think it's one of the easiest ways of somewhat actually realizing what you may be dealing with. Excuse me here. No, that was not a promotion for Rockstar Energy Drink. Sorry. The biggest thing that you have to remember in those situations is that if you get a client history, and when I say a client history, you find out that at one time they were heavily into Christianity, and then they broke away from it. And I want to point this out that I myself, I have no negative misconceptions of witchcraft. I have to point that out. But they end up dabbling into what some people call the occult, or basically it's just an alternative religion. Ironically, there's actually Muslim demons, and it actually taken me by surprise that it was 2003. There was a lady, because of 9/11, had actually dabbled in being, in the Muslim religion, and after she went back to Christianity, much like her story, much like a lot of the others that go one way and then come back to it, they end up getting tormented, and it's usually by a dark demonic entity. The main reason is, is because, look at it like this. A demon is much like a hamster in a cage, or a rat in a cage. And what happens is, this creature, this entity, is now being fed energy. Okay? And you have to remember, even if you sit there and you were a Christian, you become a Muslim, and even though you worship Allah, source of positive energy, you are still focusing energy in there, but yet some of it leaks out to even the negative ones. And once you turn away from that, once you go away from that source, that directing your energy and your focus towards it, you end up moving it back to whatever you were. The entity's sitting over there going, wait a minute, you were giving me energy, you were giving me thought, you were giving me focus, you were feeding me. So it starts tormenting that person. And in a lot of cases, a lot of true demonic cases, there are people that switch religions. And once you do that, I mean, I'm not trying to scare anyone, I'm not trying to tell people, no, don't go find yourself, Everybody has to be good and glad with what they got. But once you kind of feed the little rat in the cage a little bit, that rat grows up, and that rat comes looking for you. And these things are, they're evil,
So just by changing your religion, so if somebody goes from Catholic, say, to Jewish, they have a possibility of having a demon coming at them, or whatever?
There is that possibility, because there are actually demonic entities that had gotten formed during the dawn of Christianity, just as much as there were demonic entities that formed toward the dawn of Judaism. All these negative entities that have been created over the millenniums, they they exist because we, like I said before, they're nothing more but a rat in a cage, because we're feeding them. And once you stop and you go to something else, and then once you come back, you got to remember it's always on the going back. There was actually a gentleman that I had to investigate about 4 years ago, and I jokingly called his history religion of the week. I mean, this guy was sitting there, he was constantly coming home, he'd buy fresh milk, and the milk would always be sour in his refrigerator. He ended up like buying 2 or 3 refrigerators over the course of 5 years, because he kept thinking that his refrigerator was going bad. And the reality is no, because he switched religion focus, or religious focus, so many times, his house was just filled. I mean, I don't want to pull an Ed Warren on the matter, but seriously, I don't think I've ever found a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. Sorry to borrow the phrase from Star Wars, but it's true. I mean, there were things that just really shocked me in that home. I mean, I remember putting, every time I travel and I go to a hotel, and yes, I am that guy that steals a Bible, because I have to keep like an auxiliary stack of these things around. I always put, and sometimes inside that box that I bring inside people's homes, I put a Bible in there. And I honestly, to this day, am still trying to figure out how this entity managed to do to the Bible that it did. It literally cut that thing up, and it looked, it was wild, because I was opening the Bible, and this thing is cut into where every page looked like a character, like a shadow of a different type of entity. And I mean, it was just shredded, and who knows how many creatures were totally in that home. All I know is that it did take the use of Catholic priests being involved. It took the use of someone practicing Thelemic magic. It took a great Southern Baptist preacher, but it was a long cleanse that probably took just over a month, and it was different people each time. It was coming in there doing a blessing. Ironically, one of the things that actually does help, and I've actually discovered this over the years, is you can purchase sodium nitrate. If you actually think that you've got something inside your home, a good way to thwart it, to make it go away, is sodium nitrate. You can buy it off a scientific website. I'm sorry, not sodium nitrate. You want to take silver nitrate. Silver nitrate, and then you crush just pure salt. Use that in a mortar and pestle. Almost makes like a salt powder. You probably want 1 part silver nitrate to about 20 parts sodium, and you just sprinkle that through your attic, and you'd be amazed at, if you feel like you're always getting in fights with your wife or your husband or whatever, it could be a negative entity. It doesn't matter, it doesn't mean it's human or not, it's just a good positive reinforcement. Sprinkle that through your attic, you'd be amazed at how much your home just lifts up in emotion and feeling. Ironically, I just bought my house. I know I have an awful background behind me, but I just bought my home this previous year, and before I moved in, I actually spent 2 weeks working on the home, and I ended up spending over $2,000 basically reaffirming my property and packing salt into my walls.
Okay, Kurt, can you hold on for 1 second, honey? Hold that. Okay, all the viewers, can you please refresh your computers, and then you will be on Exact Chat. We've changed the chat room from the one that we're using now, so we're going back to the old Exact Chat. So if you refresh, you'll be on Exact Chat with all of us. So would you please refresh? Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Kurt. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. But I had spent time and some effort, basically turning my house into a bunker. Ironically, I want to say her name is Donna. That's the one? I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, when it comes down to it, I heard her at the beginning, because we are talking about some negative stuff. You're asking yourself in white light and so forth. And the reality is that if you're going to do this, especially do this for, probably one of the worst extreme hobbies that anybody could ever take on, I mean, it does have its reward. It's not like doing ceramics, but the reality is that if you're going to actually focus on stuff like that, you have to turn your home into that bunker, okay? Metaphysically wise, I wanted to make sure that my house was 10 times more protected than Saddam Hussein's home. I have a wife I love very much. I have a daughter that is the light of my life, and there's no way around it. I refuse to have anything negative take place or happen to them. And that's part of the thing of it. It just goes with the whole show. You've got to actually be willing. If you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. You've got to be willing to go ahead and take those extra steps. And that's actually another thing I think a lot of parents that get into this sort of thing, that get into the paranormal, I find it humorous that I talk to these people, these fellow parents, and they don't discuss these sort of things with their children. And I actually kind of find that to be a mistake. I mean, if you're willing to talk to your kid about sex, if you're willing to talk to your children about drugs, but yet you're not willing to talk to your kids that, well, there are these possible entities, that there are apparitions. You're not willing to talk to your kids. You're willing to dismiss it almost as fairy tale. But then when they get older, like 19 or 20 or whatnot, then you can finally go ahead and break. I think that's just a poor parenting excuse.
But I think the majority of people still to this day do not believe in spirits, do not believe in demons. Truly, they say they do. They're taught it in their religion, but they don't truly believe in it. So it's not something that they would bring up to their kids.
But see, I think that's actually a goofy, aspect of it all. Is that in my travels, in my studies, I mean, obviously I've got a little bit more insight than some people in the aspect of demonology. Do these entities exist? Yes, they do. Now, granted, I could say that's on blue in the face, but obviously, people take it always from their religion. They're not willing to see it from everybody else's platform. If you're willing to go ahead and just accept it even from your platform, and ironically, I think that maybe this is one of the best things, is I actually talked to a lady who sat there and told her son that the father, because he had served in Iraq and he unfortunately passed away, sat there and said, your father is up there serving in God's army. He's one of the fighting angels now. And I thought it was very beautiful, and it really is. But their house ended up experiencing some activity, and she was always dismissing it. Now, her son is granted only 8 years old, but she was dismissing it on behalf of him, in front of him. But yet, behind her child's back, she was paranoid. And she was scared because and there was a lot of activity inside her home that just kind of made you go, wait a minute. And the part that got me was why aren't you acknowledging this to your child? I understand children can sometimes get scared, but it's very much like this. Inside my house, I've got 4 what I call, go broke boxes. And these boxes contain elements for performing exorcism, elements for ridding a home of whatever negative. And I've got 2, one in each automobile. I've got one on the downstairs, one on the upstairs. And my daughter's only 9 years old, and yet I guarantee she probably named every device inside the boxes, and more importantly, how to properly use them better than I could. I don't think people who get involved in the paranormal especially should try to hide that from their children.